presentation on bedbug management. On behalf of the Adjutant General for the Ohio National Guard, I would like to extend the warmest welcomes for this presentation and thank you for attending today. This event is being held in an effort to educate and inform our agency's full-time workforce on the subject of bedbugs and bedbug management. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation with our guest speaker, Dr. Susan Jones. After today's presentation and discussion, please feel free to run any additional questions you may have by our guest speaker. As a side note, Mr. Timothy Morgan, Mr. Thomas Doherty, and myself will also be available after today's presentation in order to answer any additional questions you may have. At this time, I would like to introduce to you Dr. Susan C. Jones, professor at The Ohio State University, Department of Entomology. Her research program focuses on both basic and applied aspects of household and structural insect pests, where she is currently conducting extensive laboratory and field research on termite baits and soil termicides, and has most recently begun laboratory research on bedbugs. As an urban entomologist, her OSU extension, 70-ish%, and her research, about 30% of the program, focuses on household and structural arthropod pests. The extension approach is designed to provide research-based information on urban pests to the public and pest management industry. Dr. Jones emphasizes integrated pest management strategies and has been significantly involved in the outreach efforts regarding the issues of bedbugs in Ohio, in part by participating as a member of the Joint Bedbug Task Force in Cincinnati-Hamilton counties, and by being on the steering committee for the Central Ohio Bedbug Task Force in Columbus-Franklin County. So at this time, I would like to invite Dr. Jones to the podium in order to present to us Bedbugs, the New Reality.
Thanks, Steve, and thank you for being here. When I started as an urban entomologist, which was studying was about 35 years ago, I never had any idea that I would be eventually studying bedbugs, because they were something that had come and gone, and we were no longer dealing with them. And it was around the turn of the century that I started reading that bedbugs were making their way back, and they were getting into developed countries. And about 1994 is whenever I had left the Forest Service. 2004, I'm at OSU, and now I have moved from studying termites to studying bedbugs. And I say now I'm literally on the phone hours talking to people who have bedbug issues. It's very much a difficult problem, a difficult pest, and anything you can do to prevent taking bedbugs home with you is definitely the route you want to take. So today I hope to give you some information, just some of the myths that are out there. There is so much information on the internet, and a lot of it is not very good. And so I want to dispel some of these myths, be able to talk to you how to recognize bedbugs, how to protect yourself from bedbugs, what to do if you have them and it's not to run screaming out of the building, and then how to treat for bedbugs. So just a general overview of these issues. Integrated pest management is a general strategy that we use in entomology. And the very basis of this is you correctly identify the pest. I can't tell you how many times people bring in a bedbug to me, and it's not a bedbug. It can be anything from a piece of lint to one of the great big stink bugs. So I'll try to help you to see some of the distinguishing features of bedbugs. You need to do a very thorough inspection. They are called bedbugs, but they don't know that's their name. And they are found in so many other places than the bed. And so inspection is very critical. using sanitation measures, non-chemical measures, and then chemical measures. So we're doing all of these things whenever we're trying to combat bed bugs. These are true insects. The genus and species is Cimex flexularius, and the name was the bed bug because it was so common. Everybody knew what a bed bug was, and now we are all having to relearn what are the characteristics of a bed bug. Now they typically feed at nighttime, but in areas where you don't have people there at nighttime, they will come out and feed during the day. In my lab, we feed them during the daytime. We don't come in to feed them when they would prefer at nighttime. The only thing they feed on is blood. They don't need a water source. If they don't have humans around to feed, they will feed on other warm-blooded animals, but on pets, birds, rodents. So that may come into your management scheme. On animals like dogs and cats, they tend to feed on areas that don't have a lot of hair. They don't like to put their mouth parts through lots of hair. So the underbelly of an animal, the nose, areas where they don't have hair. They also cause tremendous economic distress, physical damage to people, emotional damage. We need to talk about bed bugs because they can literally happen to anyone. They're not caused by bad housekeeping, but if you have a lot of clutter, all that clutter offers hiding places for the bugs, and that makes management more difficult. But we all need to be prepared to educate our friends and relatives and ourselves to be aware of bed bugs and protect ourselves. So every year, Terminix and Orkin, which are the big nationwide companies, they come out with the most bed bug infested cities in the country. And unfortunately for us, Ohio usually has anywhere from 2 to 5 of our major metropolitan areas being in the top 10, the top 15. Now they just came out with new numbers, and Columbus for the first time is not in the top 15 list, but I just did a survey of the pest management industry, the people who are actually treating for bed bugs, and in our state, Columbus is #1 in terms of where the pest management industry treats for bed bugs. In our state, the issue started in Hamilton County, the Cincinnati area, and I was getting calls from people back in about 2004, and they were calling from Cincinnati, so survey shows indeed that is where it pretty much originated in the state. So over time, I was keeping track of where people were calling about bed bugs. And it wasn't just the major metropolitan areas, it was little towns and cities throughout the state. So I say, looking at the map, you can see that we've become a red state, just based on the complaints. We can find bed bugs not only in hotels and motels, but single-family housing, apartment complexes. Libraries get bed bugs. Kids take bed bugs to school. They show up in hospitals. Virtually any place that you have humans, you can have bed bugs. They do not live outdoors. They cannot survive in outdoor habitat, so it's strictly indoors that we're talking about when we're talking about these insects. In public facilities, they will be brought in by visitors, they'll be brought in by staff, and some of them may have tucked away in your clothing, in your briefcase, in your purse, your backpack. People who are handicapped have great problems with bed bugs because they are so often in wheelchairs and such. These pictures demonstrate how easy it is to transport bed bugs. So here on the left, you can see a little tiny bed bug that is clinging to that metal wheel. So even though it's metal, they are still hanging on. and they will be clinging to that wheel. It'll go round and round and round, and at some point they will let go, and now they're in a new environment. And if it's a impregnated female, then you're going to start an infestation. On the right is a wheelchair. All these little white dots that you're seeing, those are the remnants of the eggshells and of the shed skins of the bug. And so, somebody who's handicapped is literally at the mercy of these bugs because they're just hiding in their wheelchair, come out and feed on the individual when they want to scurry back and hide. So it's really a tragic situation. Now, these were my research associate's shoes after we visited a property in Dayton. It was a senior high-rise facility, and the elderly woman refused to have her place treated for bed bugs because she did not have bed bugs. When we went in there, it was teeming with bed bugs. We came out and we were always in trying to collect the colonies so that I could bring back to the lab so we could do research studies with them. Guess how many bed bugs had tucked away in his shoes? Any guesses? Lucky number 13. So, this was the one and only time that he wore these shoes. I wear shoes that are bald on the bottom, but we always make it standard practice to check our shoes, to check our clothing when we leave a place that has bed bugs, or even we think it has bed bugs. Shaking out clothing, taking shoes off, inspecting. You could just run a credit card, some sort of hard item in the tread and easily kill the bugs that way. But he had enough bugs to infest his place had we not been checking our shoes and made that standard protocol. Once bugs have made their way into a facility, then some of them may climb off and scurry and hide, find some crack or crevice. It's really important that you know what you're looking for. You don't panic. You don't close down the entire facility. I'm reading about schools that have closed, facilities that have closed because they found one bed bug. Instead, you need to make sure that you identify what it is. Capture that bug and give it to an entomologist or somebody who knows how to recognize the different types of insects. Part of this training today is so that you'll all know whenever you see a bed bug, the different stages, what it looks like. And you want to capture that bug for positive identification. Don't try to tell a person what you saw because I don't know how many of you know what a centipede or a millipede looks like with many, many legs. I've had people describe them to me as having a few legs, maybe 6 or so. And I'm like, you just can't communicate the characteristics that an entomologist really needs to know. So this is the bedbug life cycle, and these are some of the stages that you may see. The ones that are a bit fatter is one that has recently fed. You often don't see the one that has recently fed because as soon as they detach their mouth parts, they go off and hide because they're very vulnerable to being injured at that point. That their skin is sort of stretched. And so you oftentimes see the ones that are more flat. But we have 5 different nymphal stages. Those are the immatures, they're not reproducing. And then you have male and female adults. You also have eggs. I'll talk more about the life cycle a bit later on, but we say in general, you're talking about a little first stage nymph that's about the size of a sesame seed to an adult that is about the size of an apple seed. And those are just generalities, but you definitely can see these bugs. You can see every stage. You can even see the eggs with the naked eye. I have this household identification card, and on the left is our characteristics of bed bugs. On the bottom are bat bugs. Now, bat bugs are a close relative. In fact, at our clinic, we used to always get bat bugs. Now we get bed bugs and an occasional bat bug. but they differ by having longer hairs on the body. People say they look like a hairy bedbug. And then on the right are things that people bring into us that they think are bedbugs. And I say, you know, if you've got this big invasive stink bug and that thing's feeding on you, you're in a world of hurt compared to that little bitty bedbug, because this is the actual size of the insect. On the back of the card, I have tips for prevention and control, and the card is on my website, u.osu.edu/bedbugs, and I'm fairly sure that you'll be getting copies of this as well, because it is important that you know what you're potentially dealing with. I also have a website, and I have some of my presentations. I have that information card there, so you can download it. We have an identification clinic at OSU where this is a service for the public. Anybody can send in samples, and you will receive a identification usually within a matter of days. Now, one of the things that people instinctively do whenever they find out they have bedbugs is they throw everything away. This is really not the way you should be dealing with bedbugs, because if you throw things away without bagging the items first, then there's a chance that the bugs will be falling off as you move them down the hallway. You put things out on the street, and then people are going to be picking them up and taking them home and carrying bedbugs and spreading bedbugs that way. When you go to garage sales, when you buy things on Craigslist, you need to be aware people are selling items that have bedbugs on them. So, just being aware that they are there and that you need to be protecting yourself. If you have infested items, you want to treat them first. You want to then damage those items, destroy them so nobody else wants to take them, bag them up, and then get them out of your house if you choose the route. But oftentimes you can keep things. There are other ways of disinfecting them. So these bugs, in terms of their habit, they like to hide. They find little tiny cracks and crevices, and they come out at nighttime for the most part. But they can cling really, really tightly when they get on a surface. They don't jump, they don't fly, but they can walk, they can run, and they can move very, very quickly. These are some of the pictures I've taken as I've been out to various properties. On the upper left is behind a hanging picture. This is a picture that hangs above the bed in somebody's bedroom. How many times do you take the picture off the wall in your bedroom? Most of us don't do it very often. Great hiding place for bedbugs. There are eggs here, there's shed skin, the black is fecal spotting. This is on the other side is furniture, the underside of a sofa with large congregations of the bug. They will even get into and hide among the carpet fibers when you have a heavy, heavy infestation. And then electrical outlets. This is an OSU dorm room, and the electrical outlet is near the bed, and the bugs are hiding in the electrical outlet. So this gives you some ideas of some of the places you need to be inspecting and treating when you have bed bugs. You need to recognize their telltale signs, take measures to reduce the risk of spreading them, and reduce the risk of getting them in the first place. These are the major signs in order of how soon you're going to see them and the likelihood of you seeing them. Top on the list, black fecal spotting. This is partially digested blood. It's passed through the digestive tract, and it's liquid for a short period of time, and then it adheres to the surface, and it's very hard to scrub off. So it's not a pellet, but you look for where it is. Somebody says, well, how do you know that's not mold? Well, with mold or fungus, if you take a Kleenex and you wipe it, it spreads. not so with the fecal material. You may see their shed skins, you may see the eggshells. You can see the live bugs, but it's typically at nighttime. They only come out once a week to feed. I don't know about you, but I like to eat 3 times a day. They like to eat once a week. That's why when you have a beginning infestation, you don't get bit on a regular basis. It's about every 6 to 7 days, depending on how many bugs are there. You may have welts on exposed skin, and then they smell like stink bugs. In fact, they're a close relative to stink bugs, and so you get this buggy odor, kind of like a garden stink bug. It's a pheromone, a chemical that they use to express alarm whenever they're disturbed. So this is a dorm room, and in the corner of by the baseboard, you see those little black spots. That is our cue to look there for bed bugs. So you peel back the baseboard, and now you see that's where a group of bugs is hiding. They're right behind the baseboard. This is from a Cincinnati apartment complex. They're not all over the bed. They tend to group together. They get in the tiny crevices. They like a lot of body contact, so the welting is a place that they'll hide. When you're inspecting a mattress, you're turning the welting to see if there's some tucked there between the mattress and the box spring as well. As far as bites go, a doctor cannot tell you that you have been bit by a bed bug. All they can say is you've been bit by some type of insect. But they can gain some insight that possibly it's bed bugs because they're on exposed areas of the body. Oftentimes they'll show up around your face, your neck, arms. It depends on your sleeping attire or your lack thereof as to how and where you're going to be bit. But it's on exposed skin. Let's just leave it at that. And they rarely occur on the palms of the hand or soles of the feet. And we say that they're often in groups or rows. Well, every time a bug puts its mouth part in, it's trying to find a vein. If it doesn't find a vein, it'll take its mouth parts out and then it'll move a little bit adjacent. And so you'll get a little reaction. And I'll show you a slide of what happens. So treating those bites, you generally want to stop the allergic response, the itching response. But I go into places and people are using head lice creams and shampoos, which is doing nothing except unnecessarily exposing people to insecticides. Main thing is you want to make sure you don't get a bacterial infection. But not everybody reacts to the bites. 7 out of 10 people have a reaction. 3 out of 10, you'll never know that they were bit by bed bugs. But for the 7 out of 10, they'll get a welt, they'll get itching, redness. You get secondary bacterial infections. And this middle picture is where all the little arrows are showing where the bug put its mouth parts in before it finally found a vein. And it happens that this individual is very allergic to bed bugs, happens to be a bed bug researcher, and gets these blood-filled blisters every place a bug bites him. On the bottom is a friend of mine's sister, and she had bed bugs when the resurgence first started. The doctors didn't have a clue what was going on with her, and it's been over 10 years, and her arms still look like that because she had such a bad reaction to bed bugs. So, you know, there are some health departments that say, oh, these are just a nuisance, and I beg to differ. They're really a health issue. Centers for Disease Control, Environmental, EPA, both say bed bugs are a pest of significant public health importance, and we really need to be dealing with them. But because they aren't confirmed in disease transmission, the health departments don't have to keep records and don't have to deal with bed bugs. So when people go in homes as part of their jobs, and I would imagine depending on the type of work that some of you are doing, you may be going into other people's homes, I minimize what I'm carrying in. The things that I have to bring in with me are inside a sealed, a tote that is a plastic tote where I can put a lid on it. That way I don't have to set it down on somebody's sofa. If I have to sit down, I don't want to sit on an upholstered chair. I would rather sit on a wooden chair, and particularly one that's at the kitchen table, because that's where people are only staying for short periods of time. You tend to find the bugs where people rest, where they sleep, where they spend lots of time, and upholstered furniture can be very difficult. I change my clothing as soon as I get back to work. I keep a fresh change of clothing. I bag those clothing and then I bring them home and I launder them. You can buy disposable, these dissolvable laundry bags. So they actually, hospitals use them. You just put your items in there, put them in the washing machine, and they fall into pieces. So you never are taking things in and out. The best friend of somebody who has bed bugs is their washer and dryer. You can disinfect items just by putting them in the dryer. So when I come back from an infested property and I've got leather shoes, I stick them in the dryer and let them tumble around for 30 minutes. The heat from the dryer is enough at moderate to high temperatures to kill every stage. It used to be 20 minutes, but we realized that the eggs take 30 minutes. And eggs tend to be a stage that is more difficult to kill than the other bedbug stages. So, how many of you have checked for signs of bed bugs the last time you traveled? Okay. How many of you will check for bed bugs the next time you travel? I hope I can convince everyone to make it standard practice. It doesn't take more than a few minutes, and if you get bed bugs, you're talking about weeks and lots of expense, and weeks into months and many months, depending on the situation. But you're looking at the mattress and the box spring. You're really looking at the bed skirt, because the bed skirt doesn't get laundered on a regular basis, and so particularly up around the head of the bed. Behind the headboard is the biggest hiding places. And I know many of you have the strength to lift that headboard off and check behind it. I can get it off, and then I can't get it back on. I'm like, I'm not going to be allowed to check back into this hotel. But you do want to check the bed frame, look on the underside of nightstand drawers. Don't put your things into a provided chest of drawers. And then don't stay in a room that has any signs of bed bugs. I say that you need to keep your clothing in your suitcase, have it pulled away from the wall because they can go up and down the wall, and then put it on the luggage rack after you've turned over the luggage rack and checked it. And then you can take that luggage rack and you can just set it inside the bathtub, and the bugs aren't going to navigate the porcelain walls of the bathtub. And I can tell you there have been some hotels where I felt like I had to do this. But you can't count on a hotel to tell you that they have had bed bugs in that room previously. My sister works for NASA, and she'd gone to a hotel in DC, and she called me on a Thursday night saying that she thought she had bed bugs in her room, and it was a very nice hotel, and I said, well, send me a picture. So I opened up my email, I looked at it, and I'm like, yep, it's a bed bug, recently fed, so it's a bit elongate. That's why the manager thinks, it might not be a bed bug. So moved her into a different room, and he contacted her by email that weekend and said it wasn't a bed bug after all. His expert came in and determined it was simply a mysterious insect. So, you cannot count on somebody to tell you the truth. You have to be accountable and be able to protect yourself. Don't bring infested items home. I don't buy upholstered furniture that's used anymore. If I buy used clothing, it goes into the dryer, goes into the laundry first. This is a suitcase, again, from an OSU dorm. It's been stored under the student's bed. That is not a good place to store items. I know people are cramped for space and they want to put things under their bed, but now in the day of bed bugs, you need to stop doing that. So here is this suitcase. We pull it out. Bottom left, those are eggs. When the female lays an egg, she secretes a liquid, and the liquid dries and affixes those eggs to the surface. So the eggs aren't sticky. You'll never get an egg on you as you go in and out of a place, because she wants to be in a nice hiding place and lay her eggs. And then in cracks and crevices. So in this dorm room, they checked and they saw that his room had bed bugs, the adjacent room had bed bugs. And then they looked furthermore in the dorm and found that his girlfriend's room had bed bugs and his other girlfriend's room had bed bugs. So I said, there is some justice in the world. But these are your big 3 overall treatment options. Insecticide treatment. Now I put fumigation a little bit in gray because it is a very, very expensive option, and you're using a toxicant that will kill humans. You have to have guards posted until the place is aired out. And so you have to have a special license to do this. And then heat treatment. And later on I'll tell you about some particulars about insecticide treatment and heat treatment. But because of the nature of different insecticides, you really need one that's going to last once it dries. That's called residual. And so it's not the liquid contacting, that's called contact toxicity. It's the bug getting in contact with a dry residue and then absorbing it through its skin for residual toxicity. You have to detect this early on, and it's never going to be cheap, but it can be less expensive. It can be less time. It can take less time. There are bedbug sniffing dogs out there that you can use. Has anybody seen a bedbug sniffing dog? Okay. So they're specially trained, but it's very much that relationship with the handler, where the handler has to recognize that the dog may be getting tired. The dog gets rewarded when it finds bed bugs. So if it's getting, if its reward is food and it's getting hungry, it may all of a sudden start finding bed bugs that aren't there. And so Rutgers did a study and found that there was a lot of variability among firms in their area, ranging from a dog and the handler being able to detect them 1 out of 10 times versus 10 out of 10 times. Now I know which dog I want, but I don't know which one I'm going to get. And so I feel that you really have to have a second canine team come in, and preferably they find the bed bug to confirm, because the dog doesn't put his nose on the bed bug. It's kind of about a 10-foot radius when the scent gets really strong that the dog will then alert. There are lots of sticky traps out there. They are not very effective for bed bugs. They are effective for cockroaches, not for bed bugs. Pitfall traps that you put under the bed lays can be an important tool, because you can tell, depending on where you capture the bug, if it's in the center ring, the bug has come off the bed. If it's in the outer ring, it's come from behind the baseboard, someplace away from the bed, trying to get to the host. So this life cycle depends on temperature, the temperature of our homes. If you keep your home really warm, about 85, 86 degrees, it's only going to take 3 weeks to go from egg to reproducing adult. If it is 65 degrees or so, it's going to take 3 months to go from egg to reproducing adult. So many, many generations in a year's time. And so this is one of the reasons why you really need to get on this issue right away. As I said, the eggs are glued in place, affixed in place. Female lays about 1 to 10 every day. In her lifetime, she produces about 150 eggs. And these eggs hatch in 6 to 17 days. That is important for treatment, because a lot of chemicals don't penetrate through the eggshell. So they're also in hidden places, so if you don't contact them with a chemical, then a week to 2 weeks later is when you now have nymphs out again and you're doing that second treatment. As I said, the nymphs, they're 5 stages. The only way they're going to grow is to have a blood meal, is to feed. Once they get to the adult stage, they're a very long-lived insect. They can live a year or so. They can easily survive starvation for month after month after month. We went into a heavily infested home, and it was more than 3 months, and we were still finding live bed bugs in that vacant home. This is, I'm sure can answer this by now. If you ignore the problem, it's going to just go away. Nope, it's only going to get worse and worse and worse. So you need to deal with them. So now let's talk about some of the specifics as far as insecticide treatment and heat treatment goes. A heat treatment is using these large generators. You actually have the pest control company in there turning items. You're not using one of the big heaters like you use at the OSU football games. If you've heard about homes being set on fire in the Cincinnati area and other places, that's because they were using the wrong type of heat treatment equipment. It typically takes 6 to 8 hours. You're getting the temperature up to 135 degrees, and you're using temperature probes. They're in the walls, they're in the furniture items. It's not the air temperature. You want to get the temperature up where the bugs are hiding. It costs roughly double what you would pay for an insecticide standard, just plain insecticides by themselves. But there's no residual. Heat's gone, nothing there to protect you, so you want to include an insecticide. All of the manufacturers have done research on the insecticides and shown that they hold up to heat treatment temperatures. They do not degrade at the temperature, so it's useful to include them. Bedbug control is time intensive, it's labor intensive. You have to do a very thorough inspection, and you have to spot treat with insecticide all of those infested areas. As I said before, residual products are really important. There are low impact products out there like insect growth regulators, but there's research that suggests that some of these insect growth regulators don't work very well against bed bugs. These are the newer insecticides that are out there, and one of the reasons is that bed bugs have developed resistance to pyrethroids, which are a class of insecticide. So now, instead of just having a pyrethroid, we have combination products with a neonicotinoid plus a pyrethroid, or else we have different classes, or we have silica gel, so for more mechanical action. And then this is the newest product that actually has 3 components. And in talking to the pest management industry and in doing the tests with these products, these work a lot better than just using a standard pyrethroid type insecticide. People like to use diatomaceous earth because it's a very safe product. However, you have to put it in places where it's never going to get wet. Because if it gets wet, then it clumps, and it is acting by scratching the skin of the bug. It's a little diatom, a little sea creature. It has little spikes all over it. And water loss is one of the big issues for an insect. So by cutting the skin of the bug, now it's losing fluid, losing water. And so we did this study and found out you cannot wet it, you cannot spray an insecticide on top of it, or else it's not going to be effective any longer. So on average, if you're doing an insecticide alone approach, it takes 3 treatments. So a company that tries to sell you one insecticide treatment, it is very unlikely that you'll be able to get rid of your bed bugs with one time application of insecticides. Usually it is, on average in the state, it is 3. They have to be using different formulations. I don't know about you, but I don't think it's a good idea to spray a liquid inside the electrical outlets. You want to use a dust-type product in those situations, so a different formulation inside, behind your baseboards and such. And then rotate insecticides because these bugs develop resistance. They have a very fast life cycle. You need to hire a licensed pest control company, and Ohio Department of Ag is the one who licenses companies. And so make sure they're not just properly licensed, but that they are going to be dealing with bed bugs in a very thorough manner, inspecting them, treating in all of the hiding places. And it's for the first time when you have a treatment, an insecticide treatment, you can expect the company will be there hours doing that thorough treatment. It's not going in and spraying the baseboards and walking out after a few minutes. It's really an intense process. So, because all of these things are involved with integrated pest management, and part of it is, you're laundering clothing and you're keeping them in bags until the infestation has died down. A vacuum cleaner can be very useful for disinfecting items, but you need to use a scraping action with the attachment tool. And so here's what we do in my lab when we're collecting bed bugs. We take a nylon stocking, put it in that attachment, and then as we suck up the bugs, they go into that little nylon stocking. Word of warning, as soon as you turn the vacuum off, they're going to come boiling out as fast as they can to escape. So you turn it off, you immediately tie off the nylon stocking, and then you've got a bag of bugs, and it makes you feel better. You can stomp on it, but you put it in the trash can and get rid of it, or call me and I'll take them from my lab. I'm mentioning the laundry again because it is such an important tool for the normal person to use. In fact, the firefighters have a stand that they put in their dryer, so with their boots and materials, they don't hear them clunking around in that dryer, but they're disinfecting them using the dryer, which is a good way to inexpensively do it. Like I said, if you've got bed bugs, you're living out of bags for sometimes, because the minute you disinfect some clothing and you still have bed bugs, now they can get into those freshly laundered clothes. Steaming is a good route to go. It's methodical. You have to be very thorough, and the steam is going to literally fry the little bed bugs and fry the little bed bug eggs. Some companies will sell cold treatment, and they will try to say this by itself is going to solve your problem. It is not a standalone tool. You can use it in combination with other things, but it never should be the only thing that you're using in a room for bed bugs. Insecticides, you really don't want to be applying them to the human body. You don't want to be applying them to clothing and bedding and such. Products that we use for other insects don't necessarily work. So for example, boric acid is very useful against cockroaches, but cockroaches have chewing mouth parts. They chew at the bait, and boric acid is a stomach poison, so it acts through the lining of the stomach. And bugs have piercing, sucking mouth parts. They never get anything into the lining of their stomach other than blood, so they don't get the boric acid, and they're not affected by it. Over-the-counter products are typically pyrethroids that bed bugs have developed resistance to. They're also very low concentrations, and in general, you are not going to ever get bed bugs under control using an over-the-counter insecticide that you can get from the grocery store. Bug bombs. Now, people think, oh, this is so easy, it's so cheap, and look at the labels. I mean, they have all these fabulous claims. Well, here, somebody blew out the side of their house, had a wonderful Christmas because they overdid. They misused the bug bombs, used too many of them. I didn't realize that they say extinguish all open flames. Well, your water heater, is that an open flame, perhaps? Well, they didn't consider that. and blew out the side of their house. For the pest control industry knows that bedbugs, that if you've used a bug bomb, your problem is spread everywhere. The materials irritate the bug, and so they scatter. And instead of being in one room, now they're all throughout that property. So a couple of years ago, we did a research study on these actual products, these three over-the-counter foggers or bug bombs, and I originally, the study intent was to look at dispersal of the bugs, but I realized right away that they weren't killing any of the bed bugs. So the bed bugs it wasn't an effective tool for them, even though you could read those labels, and they seem to be fabulous products. Alaska is the only state that has banned the use of these products if it says bed bugs on them. Every other state still allows the use. Has anybody ever seen those ultrasonic repellers that they use for like rodents and insects and such? Well, let me just say, it's a waste of money. They do not work. So here I'm in a house and I see one. So I took it off the wall, turned it upside down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the audacity of these insects. They've gone and pooped on it, and they have shed their skin on it, and they're moving all around the repeller. It has to be doing a fabulous job looking at that. People like to use natural products, and on the internet they will say, we're so safe, we don't have to have EPA approval. What they also don't tell you though is there is no oversight either. We don't have to have efficacy data. We don't have to have testing data because we would tell you the truth. We wouldn't have our mother wouldn't be the one who's given you this testimony. You don't know who's doing the testimony. So Rutgers did this study looking at products that are registered by EPA, which are these two, and on this axis is the corrected mortality of how many bugs die. And so those were killing a lot of the bugs. Then they tested 11 natural pesticides that aren't regulated, and of those, only 2 of them were comparable to the EPA regulated products. Down at the far end, the eco-exempt IC2 was not killing a single bed bug in their testing, and all of these products down here killing maybe 1 or 2 out of the bed bugs. So buyer beware whenever you are dealing with bed bugs. So this has been just a very quick introduction to bed bugs. I hope that you know more about them, a little bit more comfortable with how to recognize them, understand why they are such a difficult insect to deal with. Please, whenever you travel, check for bed bugs, do some of the things I talked about today, and understand more about your different treatment options. If you're really into bed bugs and want to read research articles about them, I'm trying to put literature summaries of the recent research on my website so that people can see what is happening in the world of bed bugs. I'm on this task force. I actually was part of the steering committee, the founding committee in 2008, and we still are going strong. We just had our summit a few weeks ago, and members of the National Guard were attended as well. So I'd like to say thank you for your attention and sleep tight. Okay.